There are times when series decide to take a very different approach than what fans are used to. Now, as gamers, we've seen it take place in many different ways, from Saints Row's turn to a more wacky tone, or the next Street Fighter's shift to an open world. This concept can work, and sometimes it doesn't. However, the latest Digimon game might have taken the biggest tonal shift we've seen in a long time. I'm Josh, and we here at Robot Republic are here to see if this tonal shift was a good idea or a complete devolution. Digimon Survive takes the main concept of the series, children being transported into a world of strange creatures, but changes certain aspects to create a more mature story. The developer Hyde took a look at the prior games and series and asked what would happen if these were slightly more realistic. They wanted to focus on the idea of how these incredibly powerful creatures would interact with human children and the danger of the digital world in general. Hyde also wanted to make the game more approachable for new fans, and has changed certain elements of the lore to make it fit in this new story without distancing itself too much. However, it is still much darker than other games in the series, but maybe not much darker than other elements we have seen.
Why can't you see? Why won't you try to understand the truth?
I don't believe it. I don't believe he got Leomon. We could be next. We gotta get out of here. I can't take this. Leomon, it can't be.
If you have ever seen the Digimon cartoon, then the basis of the plot should be recognisable. First, you take several children living a normal life and then you transport them into the digital world. Or at least whatever it is currently called, it changes every so often. These children then spend their time connecting with their partners and trying to find their way home. Players take the role of Takuma Momozuka, as he and his friends are dropped into the digital world. However, not everything in this world is as it seems, and there are plenty of twists that keep things interesting. While the plot feels familiar, it never feels stale, even when the nostalgia passes. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm a huge Digimon fan, have been since I was a little kid. For instance, you see this picture? This is where I met War Greymon. See? Look at that handsome devil. And the Digimon. However, when I started Digimon Survive, I expected it to be something like this. Come on, Hyænamon, we're gonna save the digital world! Digivolve! Yeah! But instead, it turned out to be something more like this.
Dromamon, into ultimate. Dromamon, everything is awful.
And yet, weirdly, I don't mind. And here's why. You see, I'm going to be honest with you and say that the idea of Digimon not having dark tones isn't entirely correct. The television series tackled many difficult themes. There was depression, ill sisters, death, being Davis, goth friend. All of these things occurred in the show. However, the show was far vaguer about these things and covered them up with certain concepts. For instance, the Dark Ocean was always used as a metaphor for depression. Others were said out loud, but more often than not, they hid it. Digimon Survive, however, places everything front of stage and truly forces the player to see what is happening. This is especially apparent with the violence to the human children, something we never really saw in the show. The gameplay for Digimon Survive is split into two very different sections. The first are the visual novel segments. These sections are divided into narrative, exploration, and free time. The basic premise is that the free time sections are based on building relationships and finding new items to use in battle. Exploration is attached to the narrative section and is usually a mix of finding out plot points and talking to characters. You can use this to also build your affinity and find items, but it's less pronounced than it is in the free sections. Finally, the narrative section pretty much speaks for itself, but it's more focused on picking the right options than the others are, and it has more impact on the story. Now, the actual mechanics for these sections are pretty simple. Essentially, you find people in different sections of the wood, you talk to them, and then you use your camera to find secrets, collect them. Essentially, it's all very easy. But I do want to make a special mention for the actual voice acting. You see, the game is entirely in Japanese. There are subtitles, but no character will speak in the English language. This obviously makes it quite difficult to convey the right kind of emotions through the words. However, they do a fantastic job, and you can really feel the terror when it comes out. The writing is also fantastic, and the choices you make usually make sense. You see, unfortunately, there is a slight problem with trying to figure out the correct response, but more on that later. Now, combat's where it gets interesting. It's all based on a grid system, similar to the Fire Emblem games, or at least what the Fire Emblem games used to use. Players have a selection of Digimon which they can move and fight with. Some are from the other characters, others you basically collect in battle. Each of the Digimon has a special attack and a normal attack, as well as different attachments that can change their skills and moves. The number of tactics varies depending on the difficulty, but for the most part there is enough to keep engaged. Usually it's moving to either the left or right, going behind, and figuring out which attack does the most damage. Finally, we have to mention the Digivolution because it is Digimon. It's slightly different than in other games though. See, in other games it was always used as more of a progression. You reach a certain stat level and your Digimon digivolves. In this one it's more like the Super Saiyan states in Dragon Ball Z games. Essentially you get more power, you have a higher health, but it does slowly drain your stamina. Now all of these pieces fit together well, and the combination of choices that you made in the visual section will have an effect on your gameplay. However, there is one issue in that there is a lack of moves for each Digimon. You can equip new ones, but it's usually one, unless you want to severely weaken yourself. So it means battles, especially when you are grinding, get really tedious. Now, no game is perfect, and there are obviously issues with Digimon Survive, but it's mostly down to the limitations of the visual novel design. As I mentioned previously, there is an issue about trying to accurately gauge characters' reactions. Now obviously this is more realistic, but can be annoying when trying to max their affinity in a short period. The game also has some issues explaining certain things. Now these 2 points are actually combined, as to gain a higher evolution for your friend's Digimon, players need to raise their affinity past a certain point, and it is very easy to get these wrong and mean that you are constantly scraping power-wise. This is also an issue in battle, and it's one that fans of JRPGs will have seen before. Remember I mentioned Persona? Remember I mentioned Persona 5? Or remember how you had to do that weird chat minigame to bring in new personas? And how incredibly irritating it was? Well, Digimon Survive does the same thing. And it sucks just as much here. It's not like this concept of talking new Digimon round to your side is a bad one. I mean, the Digimon World games did it, but they did it very different. See, the actual task here is basically remembering responses to specific questions. It's not difficult, but it is very repetitive. This repetition is also apparent when trying to level your Digimon. Now there are 3 battles on each stage, but they all take place on the same map, and if one of your Digimon is too high a level, the enemies just run away. I don't know who needs to hear this, but movement-based grid systems do not make for fun chase sequences, because they can't run off the map, they can just run away from you. You might have noticed I haven't mentioned the visuals, but that's because there isn't really much to discuss. The sprites in battle and the drawn characters in the novel sections all do what they need to do, but they don't really stand out. They're lovely, and the hand-drawn models all convey the emotion they have to. But the lack of any real animation in these visual novel sections really hampers it. However, while the visuals are uninteresting, the same can't be said for the music. Trust me, and I do not say this lightly, the music is amazing. The main theme alone is one of the best in any Digimon game. Digimon Survive tries to take what is essentially a children's series and make it much darker. Now, Digimon was certainly perfect for this, but it's also refreshing to see. Outside of the tonal shift, there's plenty to like here, even if you're not a huge fan of tactical games. Digimon Survive might take a while to get going, and it can be repetitive, but there's plenty to love here, and the developers' love for the series is obvious enough to be enjoyable. Although the fact that there's no I'm Going Digital rock song is a major omission and should be rectified post-haste. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. so we can go more digital. Completely. Like and subscribe, please don't claim this song. Bye!